Our economy only added 160,000 jobs in April. President Obama touted that as a success, but it's the fewest jobs added in a month since last year. Our president isn't interested in creating jobs. Our president, as Secretary of State John Kerry described to graduates this weekend, is interested in creating an America that fits into a borderless world. Take a look.
In April 2016, our economy added 160,000 new jobs. That makes April the 74th consecutive month of private sector job growth in America. Over that record streak of job growth, our businesses have created 14.6 million new jobs in all. Wages have been rising at an annual rate of more than 3% this year.
There are no walls big enough to stop people from anywhere, tens of thousands of miles away, who are determined to take their own lives while they target others. You're about to graduate into a complex and borderless world.
Joining me now is Executive Director for the American Jobs Alliance, Curtis Ellis. Curtis, thanks for being here.
It's a great pleasure to be here, Liz. Thank you.
All right, Curtis, this borderless America, this borderless world that Secretary Kerry talks about, this isn't a new agenda of Obama's. This has been going on for quite some time.
Yes, he's absolutely committed to ending the sovereign United States of America. And let me just say that this idea of a borderless world really is nothing new. It's not a new complex thing, as John Kerry says. There used to be a borderless world. It was called the British Empire. And there were some men who said, we want our own country, thank you. People like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson said that. We want our own country where we can write the rules. We don't need a borderless world where you've got who knows who writing the rules, which is what Mr. Obama and his fellow travelers like Hillary Clinton want to do.
Right, and it isn't starting with this election either. It's not Secretary Kerry, it's not Hillary Clinton bringing up this topic. Curtis, tell me about how President Obama plans to enact this agenda, how he's already started diluting, if you will, the borders of America through trade agreements. Talk to me about that.
Sure. He's got on the table now the Trans-Pacific Partnership and this thing called the Transatlantic Partnership, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. These are two deals which are not trade agreements as we understand them traditionally, agreements between two countries. No, these are, in the administration's own words, platforms that other countries can join. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, 12 countries right now that other countries, including China, Indonesia, Taiwan, Thailand, just make the list, can join in the future with no say-so from Congress. The Transatlantic Partnership would be the United States and the European Union, and it would meld our economies, create one set of rules that all economic activity would be subordinated to, would be following this one set of rules under the great goal of allowing the free flow of people, goods, and money as if borders didn't exist. Those are the administration's own words. Folks, this ain't a trade agreement. This is something far bigger and far more sweeping than that.
Right, masked in a trade agreement. Curtis, who would be making these rules then? If there's no sovereign nations, no border, would this create some sort of global governance that we'd all have to bow to regardless of our nationality or our country of origin?
As astounding as that sounds, that's exactly right. That's what's going on in the European Union right now. You have unelected bureaucrats that sit there in Brussels and write rules on everything from climate change to food policy to immigration, and the national parliaments of Europe have to bow to those rules of these unelected bureaucrats. The Trans-Pacific Partnership establishes a Trans-Pacific Partnership Commission made up of unelected bureaucrats appointed by different countries, and they would write similar rules, governing, among other things, written right into the agreement, saying that Congress cannot limit the number of people that can be brought into the United States to perform service work. Service work is anything from landscaping to health care to teaching in schools.
Right, anything could be categorized as such. Curtis, why? What's the agenda behind the global governance? If you're looking past the free flow of people, of money, what is the agenda of these individuals? Do they want money? Is it a power struggle? Is it what they consider to be the best way to enact their political agendas? What's their goal?
Yeah, well, the goal is power and money. This would vest power, take power away from our elected representatives and vest it into giant corporatist entities. I mean, look, this is an old trick. Going back to the progressive era, when government said they were going to regulate business, the biggest businesses stepped forward and said, okay, we'll help you write those regulations. And they wrote the regulations working hand in glove with government, and they wrote regulations that kept the little guy out, that erected barriers to entry so new companies, startups, mom and pop, individual citizens couldn't start their own business. It protected their own interests. And that's exactly what these so-called trade agreements do. It creates a barrier to entry for any innovation, any newcomers, and it protects the power, money, and privilege of the large corporatist entities.
Right, and opposition and support for the TPP is pretty evenly divided by party lines this election season. Democrats support it, Republicans oppose it. You, Curtis, claim responsibility for convincing Donald Trump that the TPP is bad news. How did you convince him?
Well, actually, I can't claim credit for convincing Donald Trump that the TPP was bad. However, I did have the pleasure of meeting with him, sitting down with him, and he recorded a radio spot telling people to contact their member of Congress and tell them to oppose TPP, oppose Obama trade. He said in his own inimitable style, "It's a bad, bad deal." And we ran that ad, and a lot of people heard it. This was a year ago today.
All right, you mentioned this before. I want to go back to this for a moment. You talk about America having a choice then between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and that choice is a choice between globalism and nationalism. Now, that's a pretty heady topic. What does that mean for us, not just as a country? What does that mean for us in our day-to-day lives? How is that going to affect me sitting here, you sitting here, our viewers sitting here listening? How is that going to affect us, that choice?
Well, think about something as simple as the food you eat. Do you want to know where the food was grown? Do you want to know if that hamburger that you're going to feed your children was raised in the United States? Or because that's what's at stake here. Under nationalism, under an America First policy that Donald Trump is talking about, we could vote, our representatives could pass a law that says you're going to put made in USA, grown in USA on the food. But under globalism, you're going to have this international regime, and this is already happening, folks, I'm not making this up, that says, no, you can't put that on the food labels because it discriminates against all the people who are growing food in sewage ponds in Vietnam. So you're not allowed to say made in USA because people might not want to buy made in Vietnam food. And they're not, so we, you, me, the people of America, aren't allowed to know where our food was grown. In fact, this has already happened. So we'll have more of that. That's what globalism is. It's the idea of a borderless world. And you can't say where things come from because it makes no difference and it's discriminatory, which seems to be
Curtis,
the word of the day for these bureaucrats.
We're almost out of time, but let me quickly ask you then, what's the balance? What's the best way to compromise on the idea that we do live in a world where we want to trade with other nations? We want to be part of international trade, of the international economy. What's the balance between that and protecting America's sovereignty?
Well, it's a very simple balance, and it's one that's obtained for 200 years in America. We put Americans first. That doesn't mean we don't trade with anybody. We always have. But we want to make sure the policies benefit American businesses, American workers, and American consumers, not just, oh, we're going to have policies that help the global economy, which is just...
Right, the American economy first. I see what you're saying. All right, Curtis, it was great to have you on today. We are out of time, but I'll talk to you again soon. After the break, Germany is trying to force Muslim clerics to speak German after Turkey sent over 1,000 new imams to the country. Scott Greer will untangle all that for us next.